Hi, it's Paulie here. I want to share an old joy. So, when I was a wee little tacker, I went along to my first War Games club and I played some games and they really lit up my world. But the first thing that really made me look, in awe at what was being played, it was so pretty, was an air combat game. And that was actually the first campaign that I ever played, and it stayed with me and it's been wonderful. This is Mustangs and Messerschmitts, and it's World War I version triplane. Now, these are two games that use essentially the same mechanism. They're beautiful. People think of them as dead games. No, my friends, they are still in print. Now, what's so beautiful about these is they use 1/72nd scale model kits, the standard Airfix or Matchbox or Revell kit of an airplane. Mustangs and Messerschmitts is a World War II version, and triplane and some derivatives that are out there now are the World War I versions. But those kits are great. They cost very little. They paint up beautifully. You can put lots of detail on your decals. They're wonderful. There was some engineering involved in this game. So, essentially what you got was a tall dowel which was sectioned off in inches. The plane is mounted on a rod, and you'd get, particularly in Matchbox kits, you'd get a ball joint. You'd get the little stand that the model could go on, so it looked like it was flying. Matchbox ones had a ball joint, so you needed one of those. But you could also make, or you could find those as like aerials and so on in a hardware store, or you could get ball joints in hardware stores. They were easy. What you did was you attached this to a clip or a clothes peg on a rod. You turned it up and you put this ball joint there, and that's what the plane was on. Now, those divisions on the rod represent height. As your plane climbs and dives, you go up and down physical height. As you climb and dive, you change the attitude of the model, nose down, nose up. If you're banking, you bank the aircraft, or if you're rolling, and so on. What this gave you was, you would look across a room and you would see aircraft in formation, and you would see guys, diving on each other's tails, aircraft going up into loops. You get these wonderful formations, and they all start peeling off, just like you see in a great old World War II movie. They'd all peel. So it looked superb. There was a base that this rod is put onto, and this thing basically had different turn arcs marked out on it, and it had you'd mount it on wheels, the initial version, with a tiller, and you could set a peg on the tiller and you'd turn the wheel and you'd actually push the whole base. That was a little bit too much engineering for many of us, particularly when we were kids. We didn't have access to stuff. You could just make a protractor that had the curve on it, and you just put it there and just move the base around. But very maneuverable planes, tight turn, bigger things, slower turn. What was glorious about this was that this had been done by a lot of research done by people who flew the actual planes. So you got these beautiful sheets on each of the planes that had what their different maneuverabilities were. Now, some aircraft roll very well. So as it turned out, things like a Focke-Wulf 190 it's a pig. That thing doesn't turn well at all. But it's got one hell of a barrel roll on it. So the neat thing was that its roll rate was really quick. So you can kick it over and do a bit of a turn very quickly. Whereas some things that had a quite tight turn took a while to kind of crank around so they could begin to turn. So you got in kendo or fencing terms, you've got the tell. You can tell this guy's going to brake in this direction and kind of anticipate it. So you got some real flying tactics begin to come in. You begin to get some things like American aircraft late war, which are highly powerful but rotten turners, but they start moving in 3 dimensions and using the fact that they've got these powerhouse engines so they're not doing level turns, they're actually using their power to arc up and around. It was great. You could play, ME-262 versus the bombers. We had an hilarious fight from a B-17 and an ME-262, and of course the player zooms in with his ME-262 and then starts turning, bleeding speed as he does it, and then suddenly found that a B-17 has a tighter turning circle than he does. There's things after him. Da, 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 da. Oh, get off! So he has to, like, get the hell out of there. But you could play these wonderful campaigns, and you could see like a squadron through. A very memorable one we did was, it was decided, what are we going to do? It's going to be Axis versus Allies, so it will be Axis. And we want to be Italian. Why? Well, we feel that there's a certain more amount of role-playing that comes with this, plus it throws a spanner in the works to these guys who thought they'd be fighting the Luftwaffe. So the umpire says, all right, you're starting in Etruria. Oh, the British guy is saying, oh my God, so it's not going to be, so we won't be flying Spitfires, it'll be Hurricanes. Not Hurricanes. Oh, Gladiator biplanes. Says, there'll be evenings when you will kneel down on the scorpion-laden sands and you will pray to whatever thing it is you worship that one day someone actually sends you a Gloucester meteor. Says, my friends, you are welcome to the Hawker Heart. So you're playing in these biplanes and then hoping that you get aircraft that have become obsolete in other theatres, and they keep flinging them at you. That was hysterical. But there's a lovely system for firing where what they did was they examined what kind of damage is really being done, and it's weight of shot that's being thrown at the other aircraft. So some things that have got like, oh, this thing's got a couple of 30mm cannons or whatever, yes, but it's actually firing quite seldom, so its weight of shot isn't actually as good as some other things that were tried. So you start finding there's some really nice combinations. There's some stuff that can like put hits out there, but it doesn't do a lot. So you get things with lots of little machine guns that don't kind of do a lot, and you start to get quite fond of certain combinations. The old 420mm Hispanic Suzas are like very cool, and some aircraft surprise you. It's like things like you'll suddenly find there are some things that they've got to climb in them like an elevator, or they dive like a stone. It was a really nice way of discovering some surprising gifts that some of these aircraft had. So incredibly entertaining, remarkably cheap to play. You do need some space for it because you're going to be playing this on a sizable chunk of floor. This isn't something to play like, in your living room. This is something to play in a scout hall or a big dining room or something. Play it in your club hall, but it needs to be brought back. It was brilliant. The World War I version was sort of much the same. You get to find your all these different biplanes, which again, they all have radically different characteristics, and they play so well in that 3-dimension thing where the roll's important and the climb and the dive. It's that 3-dimensionality makes these things really come alive. And again, wonderful for that wonderful combination of sort of role-playing and tactical gaming that comes with air things. It's still going. This game's still out there. If you go onto the Wargames Vault, you will find Mustangs and Messerschmitts still there. It is the final version. They are going to do another version of it someday, so they say. Once playable, but it would be nice to see a revision. But it's there, and it's fun, and it works. There are several kind of spin-offs of this. You will find these on the same page. You will see there's things like Dogfight 3D and Canvas Falcons and things like that, which are all inspired by this, which use that same kind of system. So look, not a dead game. No. It is a living game, and it's one that really needs to come back. If you're an air gamer, this is really the Rolls Royce of air gaming systems because it's so damn pretty. This, once again, it's a really great introduction for younger players to gaming because it's not very expensive. You will need one model that you're going to fly. You might end up with 2 or 3, you might end up flying a squadron, but you can come in playing this with $5 or $10 of plastic models that you're, carrying to and from a club in a shoebox. So portability, great. Price, cheap. Engagement, very high. You will come back to this again and again and again and have the time of your life, and those campaigns and so on are so easy to do. So great introduction for new players, hilarious fun for older players. This is one of the great classics of the wargaming genre, and I'm so glad it's still out there. And yeah, it really needs some love. Get it back into your gaming clubs. It's breathtaking to see this thing being played. It's an ornament to any convention that it appears at, and makes a brilliant highlight game for a convention. It truly does. Go out there, Mustangs and Messerschmitts, and keep them flying, lads. Cheers.